What if a single dream could revolutionize the entire world of sweets? Meet Pietro Ferrero, a man who started with nothing but a passion for innovation. In 1946, he created Nutella, a global sensation that would go on to make billions. From humble beginnings in a small Italian town, Pietro built an empire that now generates over $10 billion annually. But the road to success wasn't easy. Wars, financial struggles, and personal loss were just the beginning. This is the inspiring story of how one man's resilience turned his dream into a legacy loved by millions worldwide. Stay with us to discover how Pietro Ferrero's unshakable determination to the creation of a sweet empire that changed the world forever. Welcome to Positivity Lab Pro, where we share stories of resilience and dreams coming true. If you believe in fighting for your dreams, hit subscribe to join our inspiring community. Pietro Ferrero was born in 1898 in the small Italian town of Ferriliano, Piedmont. He grew up in a family of farmers, learning the value of hard work from a young age. Life was tough. Italy was facing economic hardship and opportunities were scarce. But Pietro wasn't afraid of dreaming big, even when life seemed stacked against him. In his early years, he worked as a pastry apprentice, fascinated by the art of sweets. He developed a passion for creating affordable treats that everyone could enjoy. Pietro believed desserts should bring joy to people, even during the hardest times. At just 20, he opened his first bakery, pouring his heart into every recipe. But running a bakery in the post-war era wasn't easy. Resources were limited. Pietro faced countless setbacks, from financial struggles to lack of ingredients. Still, he refused to give up, constantly experimenting to make his recipes unique. Little did he know, his perseverance was laying the foundation for something extraordinary. The 1940s brought challenges as World War II left Italy in ruins. Food was rationed, and luxury items like chocolate were nearly impossible to find. But Pietro saw an opportunity. Could he create an affordable chocolate-like spread? His inspiration came from hazelnuts, abundant in the Piedmont region. He imagined a product combining hazelnuts and cocoa to make sweets accessible. In 1946, Pietro began experimenting in his bakery's small kitchen. He worked tirelessly, mixing hazelnuts, cocoa, and sugar into a paste. After months of trials, he created Giandujo, a solid loaf of hazelnut chocolate. Families could slice it and spread it on bread, a luxury at an affordable price. The response was immediate. People loved the taste and innovation. Pietro realized he had crafted something far greater than he initially dreamed. But his journey was far from over. He wanted to perfect his creation. In 1946, Pietro and his brother Giovanni officially founded the Ferrero Company. It was a small family-run business with a vision to create sweets for everyone. Pietro's wife, Piera, played a vital role, managing sales and keeping the business afloat. Their son, Michel, was already showing an interest in his father's innovative ideas. Despite early success, Pietro wasn't satisfied. He wanted to refine the Giandujo. He envisioned a creamier version, easier to spread, that could reach even more families. In 1951, after years of adjustments, Pietro created Supercrema, a smoother hazelnut spread. This innovation marked a turning point, as the spread became wildly popular in Italy. Pietro's relentless pursuit of perfection was finally starting to pay off. Yet his journey wasn't without sacrifices. He poured his life into growing the company. Tragically, Pietro passed away in 1949, leaving his family to continue his dream. His son Michel took the reins, determined to honor Pietro's legacy and vision. In the 1960s, Michele Ferrero was driven to take his father's vision to the next level. He wanted to create a product that could bring joy to families worldwide. By refining Supercrema, Michel aimed to make it even better and more accessible. He introduced a revolutionary new version in 1964, naming it Nutella. The creamy, rich spread combined hazelnuts and cocoa in perfect harmony. Nutella was packaged in affordable jars, making it a household staple for everyone. The response was overwhelming. Families across Europe fell in love with this treat. Michel's commitment to quality and innovation solidified Ferrero as a global leader. He built factories and ensured Nutella met the same high standards everywhere. Michel's focus on family values and joy resonated with millions around the world. By the 1970s, Nutella had become a symbol of happiness and shared moments. The Ferrero family's relentless dedication was finally being celebrated globally. With Nutella's success, the Ferrero Company expanded to new horizons. Michel Ferrero introduced other iconic products, like Kinder and Ferrero Rocher. These innovations cemented Ferrero's reputation as a leader in the confectionery world. Michel prioritized quality, ensuring every product met the family's high standards. By the 1980s, Ferrero had factories and offices in over 20 countries. The company's philosophy remained the same, bringing joy through sweet creations. Despite its global reach, Ferrero stayed a family business, rooted in its humble values. Michel credited the company's success to his father's determination and pioneering spirit. He believed that hard work and a commitment to excellence were the keys to success. Through every challenge, the Ferrero family never lost sight of their vision. By the 2000s, Ferrero products were loved by millions in over 150 countries. Michel's leadership turned a small bakery into a global symbol of happiness. The Ferrero family's success story is built on resilience and unwavering determination. Pietro Ferrero started with a small dream, creating affordable treats during hard times. Despite facing setbacks, Pietro's passion and ingenuity drove him to push boundaries. His untimely death could have ended the dream, but his family refused to give up. Michel Ferrero's leadership brought the company to new heights through constant innovation. He introduced timeless brands like Nutella, Kinder, and Ferrero Rocher, loved by millions. Behind their success lies a commitment to hard work and belief in a brighter future. The Ferrero family overcame wars, economic crises, and personal losses to achieve their vision. Their story proves that resilience, passion, and creativity can turn dreams into legacies. Today, the Ferrero name symbolizes not just sweets, but the power of never giving up. The story of Pietro Ferrero is a testament to the power of dreams and persistence. From a small bakery in Italy to a global confectionery empire, it all began with belief. Pietro's resilience inspired his family to continue his legacy, even through great adversity. They transformed challenges into opportunities, driven by a vision of joy for the world. The Ferrero family proved that success isn't about avoiding failure, it's about overcoming it. Their journey reminds us that with passion and determination, we can achieve the impossible. Every dream starts small, but with hard work, it can grow into something extraordinary. So whatever your goal is, never stop believing in yourself, and never give up. If you feel inspired by this story, share it with someone who needs a dose of positivity. Remember, every big dream starts with a small step, just like Pietro Ferrero's journey. Subscribe to Positivity Lab Pro for more stories of resilience and turning dreams into reality. Thank you for watching. Stay positive, stay determined, and keep chasing your dreams. Until next time, from all of us at Positivity Lab Pro, keep believing in yourself.